But I think now, as we get to the crux of this is about how these buildings are going to look and how these spaces are going to act and function for the staff and people within them. So this is for me, it's certainly the more exciting end of the project. Hi guys, welcome to our third knowledge share. For most of you, you'll kind of be familiar with myself, Victoria and Mark from VIC Ltd, should I add. But today we are joined by some wonderful guests that we've been staying in touch with throughout most of COVID and before that. So we have Kelvin Bromley, who is the Managing Director of Connect, design and manufacturer of some beautiful furniture. We have Ben from Sedus UK, who's the Managing Director over there. And again, we always have our eye on, there's a few particular pieces that we always put in our projects and go-tos for us. And we also have Jacqui from WeSpace, and Jacqui's the principal and founder of WeSpace, FF&E solutions provider.
Long-term friend. We have long-term friend, and also I think many of you fall into that category. So
yeah, we've worked with you guys across the spectrum of projects now, and I think what we've done with our work, with our sort of knowledge shares so far, is we've worked with workplace consultants, we've worked with real estate advisors. But I think now, as we get to the crux of this is about how these buildings are going to look and how these spaces are going to act and function for the staff and people within them. So this is for me, it's certainly the more exciting end of the project. And so it's how we're going to take all of that new strategy and implement it, and how we're going to visually get something out of that at the end. So I think our first point and our first topic was, what have we really been hearing from our clients? What have they been saying to you? And what support have they been asking for during lockdown? Who would like to take the floor?
Jacqui. A lot of clients have been wanting to reconfigure spaces when they've been in the office, because clearly a lot of people haven't been in the office, they've all been working from home. But we've been working with a lot of FM managers to understand what it is that people need when they come into an office. So one client wanted to take out more desks and putting more third spaces, the more collaboration space, so separate seating where people could go and work. One client has, out of 300 people, 15% were adamant they didn't want to work from home for whatever reason that might be. So they needed to make the workplace safe. They called them green and red desks rather than the A and B team, which could have been quite contentious, obviously. And worked on a system of some people would come in early in the morning and some people would come in later on in the afternoon, depending on their circumstances at home. So we've been supporting them with that. We've been giving them as many white papers as possible, following all the stuff that's out there that, you know, people like Gensler's have been doing, the companies that are at the top of the tree, by doing that research. So we've been passing that research on to our clients to say, this is what is being discovered, the data that's been uncovered, this is where we are at this moment. Does it reflect what's happening with you? How can that help you to do your research and get more information from your teams? So by and large, that's what we've done. There's a lot of acoustic products that we've put in place to separate areas as well. I know that we'll come on to acrylic screens, which is a bugbear for me, so I'm looking forward to covering that. So, but that's where we are. That's what WeSpace has been doing to help.
It's been well received, Jacqui, in the sense of like people appreciating that you're forwarding other third-party research and just knowledge sharing. And Ben mentioned that to us probably a month ago now. Ben, it doesn't seem that long ago, but you mentioned the value of knowledge share and sort of why we started this series, really.
You've just taken my piece there. You've done a lovely segue.
Thank you.
And yeah, if I just pick up on that one, the thing that we found to be most beneficial for our customers, and really, you know, there are different levels of customers, but I'm talking more at the leadership level within clients, is knowledge. There's still a lot of unknowns. I mean, if I'll give you an example, one client, Vodafone, Vodafone at the moment haven't looked or are just starting to examine planning their space for the future, because they made a decision very early on that no one would go back to the office until February. So they communicated in March or April to all 82,000 employees across the UK that no one was expected to return before February. And that's given them a huge amount of breathing room and time to start working on understanding how to get people back. And their biggest concern, for instance, is how people actually get back, how they encourage people to be safe back in the office, because we don't know whether there's going to be a vaccine, we don't know whether there'll be a second spike. So the bit that you just mentioned, Victoria, is absolutely right. It's with us, we've been sharing knowledge and trends that we're seeing across all our businesses in Europe. And it's interesting because every country is very, very different.
Kelvin, that must be definitely something you're seeing as well across region.
Well, to be fair, for us, we don't, which we deal through a dealer third-party route to market, we haven't had a huge amount of engagement directly with end-user clients. So we would be working through the likes of Jacqui and other customers. But we certainly did a number of presentations to our dealer customers regarding what we felt of our products were, I suppose, COVID appropriate. And we certainly have seen a genuine upturn in the interest of those particular products. And so I think people are still, as Ben is saying, almost sat on the fence. And if you go into London today, which I'm sure you guys have, it's absolutely empty. It's like something out of a movie, isn't it? I got off at Farringdon this morning on the train and 4 people got off. Normally there's a herd gets off. So I don't think people are really getting their heads around how they're going to get back into the office. And I think there's 2 things, isn't there? It's how do you get to the office safely and not use public transport? And then once you get to the office, how do you get in the building? Because you don't want to be climbing up 10 flights of stairs. So I think there's a huge number of challenges around the client base to facilitate people returning to offices in September, when hopefully the children will go back to school. And we'll see. I think, like all these things, it's going to unravel itself. And like the irony is, at the moment, you can go to a pub and get pissed, excuse the French, but you can't go to the office, which seems to be totally almost counterintuitive, isn't it?
And it's worth comparing and contrasting that with, what our business is seeing in other locations, because I'm looking at, our daily reporting and the projects pipeline, our CRM system, and Europe is so different. So within the Sedus empire, the only other country that's suffering as much on activity as the UK is Italy. Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Belgium, France, they're really doing very, very well in comparison to the UK and Italy. The numbers are strong.
What is their strategy? So is that because they've gone straight?
They're all back at work, mate.
And nothing's changed in terms of.
No, they're back. When I do video calls with my head office in Germany, everyone's there. They're doing the distancing. When they're in close proximity, they're wearing masks.
Yeah.
But everyone is working. It's really, really strange. It's almost, we're behind the curve anyway, but it's almost there's an acceptance that for them it's safe to go back to work and be normal, and for us there's still this fear.
Ben, can I ask you a question? I've seen a similar thing talking to our French and German. France is still behind the curve, but certainly Germany, as you say, they're all back to work. Has the furlough scheme in Germany finished?
I'm not sure. The way that my company sold it to me, and I don't fully understand it, is that theirs was more like the new one that we're doing, where they were encouraged to get employees to work part-time and then the income was topped up. And I can tell you that our company is still doing a limited amount of reduced working. So they're asking people to work, I think they're having to take 3 days off, or they're not working 3 days this month. Everyone in the company is having an additional 3 days where they're not coming in. But just to go back to the other thing you said about France, what my French colleagues are telling me is that because France is such a publicly owned country, because so many French employees work or their businesses are invested in by the state is sending a clear message to French industry saying, you carry on as normal and you keep your projects going. So there are a couple of very large banks in France that have placed significant orders with us. And I mean, really good ones. And I'm quite shocked because I thought it would have stopped. But they said, no, they've been told that it's their responsibility because they're receiving taxpayers' money or their support from the state and interest from the state to keep, going as normal.
And is it different types of products, Ben? Is it the products that you would expect normally in those type of orders? Is it the norm, what they're ordering, or is it that they are taking a little bit of a view on it's going to be, I don't know, more activity-based work settings, different types of collaboration furniture, or is it the norm? It's just the norm?
So we received an order last week, and again, Kelvin and Jacqui, I don't know whether this would shock you or make sense to you, but we received an order for over 100 cubes last week in France. I was like, what, really?
Oh no, is it going back to tradition?
But the fact that this is an enclosed space, which a lot of people in the UK I perceive are saying, whoa, this isn't something that we would consider buying at the moment because of air and blah. No, there are the big orders being placed for products like this. So either they don't have the same concerns that we have, they have a better system for dealing with it, or they're expecting the future to return to some degree of normality.
I think
that is quite strange.
The touch point has been for us, how long does the pandemic go on for? How long do we work from home before the model changes and how we go back to the office, and will that office just be different? So what you're saying, Ben, is actually because in the rest of Europe they've gone back quite quickly, actually too much hasn't changed in terms of what their future office space is going to look like.
I don't know how you're seeing it, Jacqui, but talking to my colleagues in the north, they're starting to see traffic returning to sort of pre-COVID levels, and therefore traffic jams and road rage is coming back in. And yet, but in London and Manchester, the same, I understand. But I think in London, the return to work does seem to be somewhat delayed and not as engaged as elsewhere in the country. So we're also almost looking at two parts of the UK, London versus the rest of it, because people are back at work particularly where they can drive to work.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, actually. I came back to the office about 6 weeks ago. I'm working from our little distribution centre, and we've got a pod within there, and that was primarily because of technology challenges that we had at home. We live in the middle of the North Yorkshire National Park, and we're on snail mail. Broadband is something that they've still got to discover. So traveling 10 miles this morning, traffic was normal, what it used to be pre-COVID, and we're in Manchester last week and coming back on the M62. There'd have been an accident. We were travelling on the eastbound back. On the west side, there was a 6-mile tailback. And it was just like nothing had changed, that we weren't in a different world. So yeah, we are seeing that happen, albeit I keep hearing that London is still busy from a business point of view, unlike the north, which is taking a lot more to get started with orders and prospects. I'm not sure if that's the case, whether London has stopped the orders and everything, and everybody's just at home doing the normal jobs. Is that happening, Ben, in London for you?
I'm with Kelvin. I was in London yesterday, and it's very quiet. I was going to say it's like a Saturday, but it's not, because Saturdays are busier. It's very strange in Clerkenwell. And whilst people are in the office, do you know what? Around our building, the people in the office tended to be leadership. I noticed that the general administration, the support staff weren't around. It was really leadership, and maybe that's a function of wanting to get away from home and not be in a home environment, or maybe it's because I don't know.
We've seen that, Ben. It's exactly the same. Some of our clients as well, and I've been going in sort of a day or so a week just to help support some of my clients in their return to office scheme. And one of our large clients is obviously encouraging some return to office as and when it's safe for them, for their staff to do so. So I think to Kelvin's point of everywhere seems relatively busy, and to Jacqui's point of, you know, the roads are busy, London isn't, because the majority of people travel such a distance on public transport. And the guidance still is, if you can do your job from home, then do your job from home. So until that changes, I think a lot of businesses and a lot of clients are really going to struggle in actually not mandating, but, you know, encouraging even further for people to go back to the office, because people in London can't get there unless they take a tube or take a overground train, of which they feel very uncomfortable with. I think the sort of myth busting that I was telling Robin and Mark a couple of weeks ago when I went in, and I know Jacqui, you saw my video of going back to the client office in London, was at rush hour there was one person on my platform at my home platform, and when I arrived into the city at City Thameslink, one person got off the train and passed me, and in rush hour going home there were 4 people at City Thameslink at 6:20 on an evening, which is just, you know, it's completely different. So returning to the office at the moment for me, even with my clients, is not everyone's in, but some of the key learnings that we've had recently, which again not directly related to the furniture world, but some just to share with you, is that we're now getting to a position where I had to meet some senior partners a couple of weeks ago, and 2 of them were in the office, a managing director was in the office, and I was the only one working from home. So I didn't feel like I could be the one that took the meeting remotely. So they travelled in for this meeting, and it was lovely to see them. It was lovely to have some engagement and be around people. But it's now getting to that difficult section of trying to plan a meeting and asking, well, are you in the office? Are you out of the office? And then everyone's trying to rejig their diaries to make sure you're all in the office at the same time. So that's been quite interesting. And it's from a furniture and planning perspective, with the facilities and management teams in some of our client offices are really trying to support by identifying desks that are available, almost like a checkerboard approach, because the 2 metre distance, or the 1 metre now, isn't it? It's sort of, we've created radiuses to help support people staying at distance, and they've got a lot of protocols and etiquettes in place when you do go back to the office and it feels safe. But Jacqui, I think to your earlier point, which is sort of directly linked around those good old acrylic screens, they're one of my big bugbears as well, and mainly, well, for a couple of reasons. One is I appreciate that acrylic screens are helpful and they give the person behind them some comfort, and it's more of a perception to try and help support people being in close proximity to people. But ultimately, if they don't go floor to ceiling, you've still got airflow, so you've still got circulation around them. When the NHS are using them, you know, this is not factual, this is just my opinion. When the NHS are using them, they're also covered in their own face guard, their own masks, gloves, aprons, everything else that supports the knock-on effect. And I think sort of seeing people investing in those and not really thinking about the broader support that they could be doing, maybe through pods like Ben is talking about, or, you know, other spaces. But I don't know what your experience is of seeing these acrylic screens pop up, guys. Are people asking you for a new furniture solutions or integration with them?
Yeah, I think the whole acrylic screen things goes against a lot of my values. I think I can understand why shops, restaurants, supermarkets, pubs are doing it, but offices, yeah. Let's just think about this, Kelvin. We've been doing this for a long time, and how long ago do
You speak for yourself.
Thanks for missing me out of that one. Appreciate it.
Ben, you're not even close.
So, you know, but you know, we started talking about well-being, and we understood about noise pollution and what was happening in the office, and you know, distractions, and particularly the noise. So we started looking 10, 15 years ago at acoustic solutions, and those have grown in number. We've seen that. You guys as manufacturers are, you know, are bringing out new products all the time. You're increasing what the acoustic ratings are. You know, it's a massive thing. But if we think about, and I'll just go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the first 2 areas of that, if you think about it, the physiological side, so we've got the air, the water, the food, the shelter, clothes, sleep, And then we go into the safety, which is the personal, the security, your health, resources, employment. So as employers, we're thinking about keeping our people safe, which is what we have to do. And then we decide to install giant Petri dishes. Sorry if that offends anybody, but we're encasing people in plastic boxes. There's reverberation, it doesn't absorb sound. You know, let's be honest about this. People don't even clean the desks. Are they going to start cleaning down the sides and the front of a giant box? So, you know, coming back to Victoria's point, the virus is now reported to be able to, it's airborne. And people calling them sneeze screens, just, I find it very offensive, actually. So if it's airborne as well as being transferred by droplets, then the best thing to do is sit with a mask on at your desk. But there was an interesting document that came out yesterday from Chimera, and it was a great report. And it was saying that so far, evidence is suggesting that textiles are not seen as a major carrier of the virus. It doesn't survive well on soft surfaces. If we think about the structure of fabrics and textiles in general, it gets trapped, and therefore the likelihood of spreading is lower. So, and you can actually clean some textiles now, and Chimera, just being one of the manufacturers, because I don't want to alienate, you know, all the other great companies that are doing exactly the same. But there are products that Chimera are saying that you can, with a dissolution of bleach, I think it's 1 to 10, you can actually use bleach to wipe the screen, the fabric screen, and it can actually kill the protein layer that surrounds the virus. So why would you change the fabric screens that you've already got around you to a big plastic box that...
Yeah, that's really important.
It's not going to stop the spread of virus. So a client came on to me yesterday actually and said, we need to make our desks safe. And I said, they are safe. You've got fabric screens at the side, you've got fabric screens in front of you. That's all you need. Get the people to wear masks if they need to come back and sit at those desks. Make sure that the desks are clean, and just wipe down everything in the same way and wash your hands. Don't spend any more money.
People are so scared of getting it wrong though, aren't they? They're so scared of not jumping on what everybody else is doing. And you know, my chiropractor opened up a couple of weeks ago, and bless him, he's got a massive perspex screen along the front of his desk. And I was like, Rob, what are you doing? You know, this is going on. And he said they've got to have it for insurance purposes. So the insurance companies are now saying that they've got to have, I mean, that's chiropractic, it's not an office, but it's a reception space. And I just was really flabbergasted at, like, that's now being written in as protocol. And, you know, for offices and employers, they're obviously trying to make sure they can make it as safe as possible. And if anyone does get, you know, unfortunately catches the virus in their offices, they're scared of being sued or not being safe enough.
Just to reinforce what you were saying, just to add to the plastic bit, one of the challenge, we fitted plastic screens in our office in Germany, in one of our offices, and the staff are having a real problem with it because of reflection. So it's a very different, but they're all
seeing themselves.
Yeah, no, they're seeing themselves, but they're also seeing everyone moving around them. It's true. And so what they're doing is hanging things up. I've got a photograph there which illustrates it, that people are hanging clothes over the top of the screens to stop them being able to see all the bounce back reflection. So it's a very different thing, but it's a problem for them.
Well, it's less productivity as well.
Yeah.
We're all talking a long time about something we all agree with, that perspex screens are inappropriate, and we're all trying to discourage people from using them. But of course the question mark is, what do we tell our customers, and what do we use ourselves to protect our own staff and advise other people? And I think obviously that's what you're looking for. I think we all agree, Jacqui, that perspex screens are a no-no. You know, I think it's a result of people trying to replicate the retail arm of our society. The other big issue with perspex screens is what you do with them when this virus goes away, because they will sit in landfill. We can't recycle them. So from a green perspective, they're a no-no. So I think we just need to agree that they're not a no-no and move on and talk about what we can do. And I think you made some interesting comments earlier, Victoria, about the people moving away from desks. I think if people continue to work from home, when they come into the office, they won't want to sit at a desk. They want to sit and talk to other people. And it's how do we facilitate those areas so people can sit safely and interact and collaborate and to the benefit of the business.
And I think that's unfortunately, Jacqui definitely touched on it in terms of, clean your desks, make sure that, our facilities or client facilities wash your hands, wear a mask, all of that good stuff that an individual can do. And I think it just falls back on the employer as how they can support and make sure their environments are safe. But again, then to your point, Kelvin, we had a wonderful conversation with our friends at Situ, and they work in the co-working and open plan flex market. And they were saying about, open plan isn't dead, and people are worried that open plan is going to be the thing that everybody doesn't want to go back to. But actually, in terms of a virus position, you can see people coming from a long way off, so you can keep your distance. You don't have to be sort of checking into meeting rooms or touching handles to go into a meeting room. They're looking at collaboration settings such as booth type furniture, and now knowing that information that he's just shared about Chimera, that's quite interesting about the textiles that we could start applying to those products so that they are easily wipeable, then they're low risk for contamination. But people do want to be in the office to see people. And I know that actually next Tuesday, I'm going into a client office. I know that about 10 to 20 people that I work with are going to be in on Tuesday. So, great for that client, because they're going to have an uplift of all of the real estate function going back in, and it's going to be wonderful. But they also are in a relatively new build, and they've got all this wonderful activity-based settings that you can go and have a meeting and not have to be in a room. Because I have to say, I don't want to sit in a room with 3 other people that's, a huge room. I don't want to be confined with air. Like for me personally, that's not what I want to do. So, my points personally from our business would be that people should be investing in those open plan settings, clever materials, big enough, almost like those wonderful booths that we have, those high back furniture booths that are able to seat people at a distance, but you could have, 2 to 3 people at those 2 meter, 1 meter distances. But I remember speaking to Ben about this, and Ben, when we first discussed about doing this knowledge share or getting involved with your team, we thought that there would be a difference in what people are ordering because of that. So weren't expecting, that was sort of my leading question earlier as to this big order you had overseas, was we would personally be thinking in the UK that the investment would be for these activity settings rather than desks and task chairs, because people would want to be changing up their workplace, making it flexible, knowing that people are going to be remote working, so their occupancy levels are going to be lower than they ever have been before. So encouraging that sort of community aspect. So I was really surprised that in region your orders are staying the same, but with this booth type position. And I'm just wondering, maybe from Kelvin and Jacqui's perspective, are you seeing that type of change? Do you agree with those comments, or is there another tactic that you're taking that we should all be aware of?
I think, sorry, if I can chip in, Jackie's absolutely right. That my understanding, certainly what I've read, is that fabric and PET felt is far more safer than hard surfaces, because the virus gets trapped into the fibers of that material. Whereas if there's a hard surface such as melamine or whiteboard, that type of thing, it sticks, or perspex, it just stays on the outside and is easily transferable. It's all about the transferability of that virus. Another point you made earlier, Jacqui, was about it appears that the virus is far more airborne than we originally thought. So the important thing is that for most offices, that they, in this time of the year when the weather's good, is you keep the windows open where you can to get air movement through the building and shift the virus from out the door, as it were. But I think, going back to your point though, Victoria, is that I'm seeing a lot of my colleagues and I are seeing a lot of tenders coming through, and there doesn't seem to be much shift from what people specified 6-12 months ago. So I'm not entirely sure that people are actually too concerned about. They're almost saying it's going to go away, so I'm not going to buy anything that I have to change in 6-12 months' time, if and when there's a virus or whatever, an act of God or whatever. Wow. So I don't know, usually, Ben, all the tenders I've seen in recent weeks, it's pretty much the same.
So I agree, but I think it's the volume of tenders. So I think we've still got the capital projects, the major flagship projects, the ones that have to happen are still going ahead. But I think at the moment, we were saying other people have held off making decisions where they have the ability not to necessarily, when they're not forced to make that decision. I think they're still waiting. But definitely.
And that's part of the reason why people aren't going back to the offices, because I think employers don't know what to do in terms of how it's safe. And I think that the Perspex screen thing, not what I mentioned the Perspex screen, but it was almost a false sense of security. I'm doing something because I've seen them in Marks and Spencer's or at my local petrol station or whatever, or your chiropractor in your case, Sir Victoria.
I think that's the value of this knowledge share as well, isn't it, right? So it's about engaging, it's about businesses and occupiers engaging with the likes of us to actually make better decisions towards how they gear themselves up for people returning to the office.
One of the interesting things is that I think that a lot of us have become very comfortable working from home. And one of our customers has stated that they're surprised at how well people have adapted to not working in the workplace. And people who have worked from home a lot, like Jacqui, like Kelvin, like you guys, like myself, where we're comfortable doing that, we kind of know the rules. We know that when you work from home, you work as hard as you do, if not harder, than when you're in the office. You may work from 8 in the morning to 6, 7 at night, and then you sit there with your phone doing more emails. Continue. You don't actually switch off as easily. You may not work the whole time, but the period of focus and concentration generally can make you more productive in getting the tasks that you need to do in isolation done. The problem is at the moment that we're all forced to work from home, and we're doing the tasks that we would normally do in a collaborative environment at home as well. So for example, when we're having team meetings, we're doing it by Zoom, and Zoom only allows one of us to talk at the same time. And I'm looking at your faces, but I can't see all of you at the same time. So you guys find it hard to interrupt me if you want me to shut up or you want to make your point, and it lengthens the time. So whilst people are working harder or as hard as they were, the question is really about whether productivity is as high. And I'm not sure that the country has realized that productivity is dropping dramatically because we're not as effective. We're comfortable, we're happy, we're enjoying it, we're working hard, but we're not as productive, I don't think. One example or illustration. Yesterday I was in our showroom, and I was in there for a couple of minor meetings, and networking sessions. And I went next door to our neighbours who happened to be a furniture dealership. And I popped over, and as I stood over, I went to say hello and, remind them that we were present. They had a big spreadsheet out with a load of furniture on it. And I said, "Oh, what's that?" And they said, "We're doing a tender." I said, "Well, a lot of that could be ours." They said, "Oh," I said, no, seriously, look, that's Sedus, that's Sedus, that's Sedus. They said, "Oh, do you want to have a go at it?" I said, "I'd love to." You don't get that on Zoom.
No.
True.
No.
I think it depends what industry you're in. So just by way of an example, Bill was talking to an insurance company and he said, "It's very quiet. You're working from home?" And she said, "Oh yeah, thank God, instead of being in the call centre, which is noisy, I can't concentrate." Now, if you think about it, innovation happens when people get together. When you start doing individual tasks, I think, like that lady, she said, "I don't want to go back to the workplace. I want to work from home," because she is more productive, because she can get more calls done. So it really depends on the industry, the job, the role.
The activity as well.
Exactly, the activity. So, all of these things are what we do. They all go into the melting pot, don't they, when we're taking a brief, because everybody's different, every activity's different, every role's different. So I think we've just got to understand that which industry is more productive or can be more productive by working from home. I'm a trustee for a charity, and our charity deal with some awful cases. We provide protection and advice for people that are suffering from domestic abuse and violence. And of course, during this time, the perpetrators are at home, aren't they? So our team now are having to work either from 6 o'clock in the morning to have conversations before the perpetrator gets up, or after 10 o'clock at night. So the whole workday has shifted. But what we know is that those people do want flexibility. They're remote working now. They're not agile working, because that's the mistake that a lot of people are making. They're saying all our teams are agile now. They're not. They're remote. But we know that we've got to do things differently for those people. How do they work? So again, it's that role. You know, how are they interrupted? How can they do things differently? And how can we support them? And it's not just about furniture.
But the other thing is, I think from home working over for a number of years, Ben, and you're around, and Jacqui have been around long enough, and home working has come and gone, and generally it is something that employers don't seem to think it works. As someone said earlier about productivity, I do believe that people will realise that people aren't as productive working from home on certain things. I do believe you've got to get your head down with no interruptions. That's a good thing. But if you want to be on the phone talking to people and so on and so forth, it doesn't work. You know, BT tried to put everybody into home 5-10 years ago. They've stopped all that. So I'm not sure what they think is going to change. You know,
Mark, you and I talk about it quite a lot when we talk about the types of work we're doing in these office spaces and what setup is required for that. So we talk about productivity working from home, and Victoria's touching it. I'm not productive working from home. I'm desperate to get back into the office, but I'm desperate to get back into the office for that isolated time, where the flip of that is most people want to work from home for that isolated time when they're away from their colleagues. So I think how that plays out in terms
You just want to get away from your family.
I think for me, you have one choice of setting, or I have one choice of setting from home, and it's my desk. Where a well-designed office space or a well-designed flex space has a number of choices of settings. Even within one floor plate, the ability to choose based on conditions, based on task, that is key for me. I know I'm more productive when I can just pick up my laptop and go seek the preferential conditions. And preferential conditions from me as the non-creative here, but it's you creatives and it's the furniture designers and furniture suppliers that create those settings for someone like me to use, So that's the key for me going forward, is the choice, control, and not just the choice between home and office, but your choice of the environments within the office.
Yeah. There's me, Mark, thinking that you were talking from the gym.
It's many things here. This is my guest room, my gym, my spare room, my office.
You won't get away with that when you're married, mate.
Yeah, this will be the dressing room.
But it's a really good point, Mark. And I think coming back to some of the research that Gensler has done, which was quite surprising actually, millennials don't want to work from home. They don't want it at all. They want to be with people. They want to have different settings. They want to be able to move around. So, and that's a generation that's coming through. So we know that we're not going to go back to the offices and the home working. But just in terms with the client we've been working with, we were due to get an order. And the whole thing fell away off the cliff like most of them did. And we were working with our fit-out partner as well, and there was a major piece of fit-out to do. And they called and said, we're not doing it, we're just reviewing our strategy. And they had 50 people that work in a call centre. There's 120 people in total, 50 of them worked in a call centre. And when we were first looking at the project, they were calling it agile, but said obviously the call centre staff can't be agile. Now they've realised that the call centre staff can work remotely because they are doing from home. So their strategy now is they're selling the head office that we've been looking at refurbishing. That's going. They're going to get the cash. They're going to keep hold of the cash, and they are going to expand their business. And they want to open up local hubs
Yeah.
And what they want is an experience within those hubs. So they're going to offer flexibility of working for the teams, so they can work from home when they need to or want to, but they want an experience when they come into that space. They're not calling it an office, they're calling it an innovation hub. They want people to come together and they want to develop ideas. Now, what's been interesting is they don't want any fit out. They're not building walls. The walls are going to come from acoustic products, acoustic curtains, storage solutions with acoustic products on the back of it, so they can have the zones, but they want it to be open. They don't want any closed, no meeting rooms, no boardrooms. They've shifted completely in 6 months from being, there's a boardroom, there's 3 meeting rooms, that's the HR department, that's the call centre. It's turned it on its head completely. And that's been quite a revelation, actually. And I'm really enjoying working with this client because they're thinking differently now. They're not thinking in the same way that they always had done.
It's
And
amazing.
they're looking at the millennials and they're saying, these are the people that are coming through. This is what they want. It's not what we want anymore. It's what they want, because we need innovation. We need to move forward. So
that echoes Situ's
that's been a big
comments
thing
as well. Yeah, that's Situ said the same. Hub and spoke model. They're probably going to start taking the lead and taking the change. But I think, you know, Jacqui, that's like a common misconception that millennials want to beanbags and have laptops and all that kind of stuff. But millennials don't. You know, the research that I did with CBRE, I remember them doing a huge millennial piece. Millennials want to be with their senior members of staff. They want to be absorbing information. They want to be able to see and learn and absorb and do as much as they can. So you're right, I think, and what an amazing transformation for the client you're working with, because it's going to broaden how a call center works. Like, you know, all the contact centers and call centers that we all, you know, have had previous experience with working. It'd be amazing to see how that can adapt. It'd be what a transformation as well.
To coin your phrase, Jacqui, that I first heard from you, that is the third space becoming the first space.
It's the third space. That was what WeSpace was all about. It's about those third spaces. Get people together. Get innovation happening. That's the only way that it happens. Not like this.
Guys, just before lockdown, obviously in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a big rise in the likes of WeWork and other what I call co-working spaces. I just wonder what your thoughts are on how they will cope with the post-pandemic environment, and whether we'll see the continued growth of the new serviced office, as it were, or whether that will start to go backwards. I'm interested to know what's going to happen.
Off the back of one of our previous calls with Situ and the other knowledge share, they've talked about rolling technology out into those spaces and them spaces becoming bookable. So if you're moving into one of those types of spaces, you could already pre-book your desk, or if you're short at going into the office, you can see who's around, who you can go and collaborate. So it sounded like those spaces are going to continue and actually be a good model to roll out.
But the problem is, though, Robin, is that it's like restaurants, isn't it? All these co-working spaces rely upon the volume of people, and the more people they get in there, the more money they make.
Yeah.
So if they're restricted on the number of people that it's safe to bring into any given space, will that model still stack up? That business model still stack up?
Very true.
Yeah, we actually have space in Leeds in a Bruntwood shared space, 18 floors, is it 16 floors platform, and we've not been back in for the reasons that we work in a very small office and we can't open the windows either. We're only on the 2nd floor, so we can walk up and we can walk down, but the people probably on the 16th floor are not going to be happy about walking upstairs. So I think they've put into place you can go up in the lift, but you have to walk down the stairs. But they put more sanitization stations in there, so people have to sanitize their hands more often. They put a traffic light system for the toilet, so if it's red, somebody's in there, for example. And the co-working spaces have been closed throughout this whole period of time. whilst they understand what's happening and work it all out. So is it dead? I don't think it's dead. We'll definitely go back into that space when we know that it's safe to do so.
The one thing I was going to say is, you know, there are businesses and clients and building sites all encouraging work to keep going, but the virus hasn't gone. And, you know, Mark and Rob and I, we have to continually tell ourselves that, because we want to do the right thing by our clients, but you know, we're trying to set some ground lines or baselines for us about, you know, when are we going to decide that going to see clients or getting the guys to travel is suitable. So at the moment, you know, we're going to see a new client next week, and because it's in London, I'm going to go, and the guys will, you know, be briefed on that after that. And it's hard because the economy wants to get going, and employers want their businesses to keep going and offices to be busy. But certainly for the region of London, you know, I think Ben and Kelvin are going to see London pretty empty for a while longer now. Not going to shift very quickly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
So Kelvin, you've been bearing in mind, just in terms of your time today, what if you could give anybody some maybe top three sort of words of advice or and focus in what you've heard through lockdown as connections, biggest learnings, or what to take forward in planning for real estate changes, what would that be for you?
It's a difficult one, but you know, we are certainly, the problem we have, I was starting to get our office team back into the office, but we had one of these local spikes in Kirklees, so we've had to sort of back off on that, because, you know, there's been apart from Leicester, also Kirklees has had a spike, so we've had to back off. And all I'd say to you is, I think, you know, people, there's a balance, I suppose, is between people working from home. I know one or two of my colleagues have had been able to reduce their childcare, therefore their income has increased on the back of that. And we as a company have been quite flexible on how we approach that. All I won't do is let people work from home on a Monday or a Friday. Certainly Friday afternoons, that's not a no-no. So I think it's all about a balance, isn't it? And I think that, as Jacqui was saying earlier, there's work that you can do from home. And that's my point about people are not going to go back into the office to sit at a desk, whether behind a perspex screen or not. They want to go in and meet people. And I think when we've opened the showroom here, you know, the sort of the motivation and the change in my salespeople, having met their colleagues and being able to have conversations was quite remarkable. And the same has happened in a more limited way in our factory in Huddersfield. You know, office staff going back, also the factory staff going back were far more motivated and kind of on it, as it were, than they were sat at home. So I think but at the same time, it's about the balance and learning from this whole thing. You know, for example, I used to spend most of my time on the road or on a train, and it's the first time in the last 10 years I've spent any time in my house during the week. So I don't intend to change that. I tend to work from home for part of the week and travel for part of the week once we can get going. I think, Ben, you're the same. You know, it used to go home out on a Monday morning, come home Friday night. But, you know, I quite enjoyed living in Brighton, which I've not done for some time. Over to you, Victoria.
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful for that insight. I think, you know, our business is built on people working remotely, and literally just before lockdown, we were looking to take some sort of office space up in King's Cross to allow Robin and Mark to be able to come down and work when we needed to get together, and that was only going to be a couple of days a week. We're quite grateful that we didn't sign up for that, because that might have tied us into a contract that we, you know, probably would have had a bit of problem with through lockdown. But I think there's definitely value in a team getting together, and I don't think any of us, you know, Mark, when we were working at So Vibrant in Harrogate, the best work we did was when all of us were together talking about our clients, talking about who we were going to see, being able to feel each other's excitement about project or queries and concerns about another project. And I really miss that. Like, I miss seeing Rob and Mark, like, even just once a week for that sort of connectivity. I think the difficulty and sort of what we might do going forward is, I've also realised, certainly from Mark's perspective, he's been on his own. He doesn't live with family and doesn't have anyone around, also doesn't have a garden. So the wellbeing side for Mark, for me, has been huge. And then we've also been working really closely with Robin, because he's got an 18-month-old baby girl who likes to join our calls every now and then, and has a wife who works you know, all the time, and actually Rob's not productive. He can't work there. He doesn't want to have those distractions, but you know, we've come to an agreement that he works when Ivy goes to sleep, pretty much. And actually, as an employer, that's quite hard as well, because you've got to change your expectations of when things are delivered and manage your clients. And you know, that's not furniture related, but it's well-being related and connectivity with your team. So you know, maybe we will be calling on you for some booths, Ben, or Jacqui for some, you know, sexy new furniture, and Kelvin will be coming to your showroom every now and then, try and pop in, I think.
But also, Victoria, I think we're all still trying to work out from a product perspective, how do you best service that collaboration when people are together? What is that going to look like? And I was surprised to hear from Ben that people are buying these kind of glassed enclosed pods with limited ventilation. And
yeah, I can't believe that.
I was surprised at that, because we were developing one and we've kind of backed off it a bit. And also the other thing was things like, you know, large tables. We thought that people were trying to get more people into a space, but now they're going to be 1 meter apart. So the tables are going to get bigger, or we're going to get rid of the tables. It's a interesting subject to see how it's going to evolve over the next 12 months.
Maybe we can all get back together in, you know, maybe 3 or 4 months' time and see if there's been any developments. Certainly from, I think we've all of us, is it right to say we've got sort of September in our minds, that we're going to see a bit of a shift, and maybe we'll get some different ideas on what product development could look like, and we can feed in what we're seeing from our clients, from you guys to you guys as well. But we're also hoping some of our projects that fell away come back on the table, because
certainly I would welcome, you know, your views on whether we're going down the right road in terms of what we're developing in terms of product in order to facilitate this. We got this phrase of new ways of working does seem to be, you know, again, it's but very different news, very different new ways of working that was considered 5-6 years ago.
So before we close off, because I know, Kelvin, you've got to run, Ben and Jacqui, I probably want to ask you the same questions as to Kelvin. If there were 3 things that we could sign off or very quickly grab from you as to what you advise people to start thinking about for the future, or the key things that you've learned over the past few months of lockdown, what would they be?
Go on, Ben.
I was doing the ladies first thing there.
I am with bated breath.
Yeah. So what are the 3 things? The first one is the importance of sharing knowledge. I feel events like this, the research, the data that we're getting, the fact that I can share with you what's happening in other countries, so we don't feel as isolated. That sharing of knowledge is absolutely essential. The second thing is, I think whatever prediction we try and make about the future of the workplace, of the office, will probably be wrong, because I just can't predict what's going to happen. You know, there's so many variables in the economy, in the way that people are working, in global events that affect it. But the third one is the home office. And I think the importance, we all know that people now can work, the need for presenteeism, I suspect, will diminish, and that people will be allowed and trusted to work more at home. So I would want to encourage people to consider turning their workplace into a more effective environment, because I believe employers have a degree of responsibility, if they're going to save the costs associated with having, you know, full occupancy, with providing their staff with some form of comfortable environment, even if it's just a good chair. From Sedus. Thank you.
That's really kind of you. Jacqui? Sorry, Kelvin, go on.
No, it doesn't matter. I was just going to say that but it's interesting, isn't it, that there's been a huge amount of talk about home office furniture, but in the main, most task chairs that have been supplied to home office do not comply to domestic fire regulations. And I'll leave that with you.
That's a good point.
Go on, Jacqui, give it to us. Come on.
Give it to us. I think the only thing that we can get right is to get it wrong. Coming back to Ben's point, who'd have seen this coming? You know, how many disaster recovery plans would have included a pandemic? Did yours, Kelvin? Mine didn't. I think the biggest thing is that people have got to start thinking about other people and not just taking it for granted that, you know, we're the only ones in this, because everybody is there, and we do need to share a lot more knowledge. And we just need to help make the workplace a safer place for everybody, really, however that might look. But I think the cleaning, we might just be at a point where people start washing their own cups up instead of leaving them on the desk. I think clear desk policy, I've banged on about that for years, but you know, I've seen, and we've all done this, we've all gone in to do workplace service, haven't we, and opened the pedestal, and there's the last week's sandwiches in there, and the shoes, gym shoes, and you know, the desk is just full of everything that a cleaner can't clean. So I think if people can start thinking more about that, just think about others. But let's just keep the acoustics going, can we? Can we just think about the well-being in the office? So manufacturers, there's 2 of you here, and you're great manufacturers. Get rid of the acrylic screens, please. And I'm pleased to say that neither of you are doing that, are promoting that. And yeah, let's just come up with some products that, you know, are going to work, and they're not just going to be there to be aesthetic. They're going to support the workers.